Is Australia on path to become the land of crypto opportunity? It certainly looks that way, as AUSTRAC has now registered over 200 exchanges who have applied to become regulated exchanges, digital currency exchanges in Australia. Much like other countries have done, such as Malta and Gibraltar, Cayman Islands, and these other countries that are pro-crypto to try and attract that entrepreneurship, that innovation and that capital, Australia certainly looks like it's on the path to heading in that direction as well. So we're going to talk all about that in today's video, but be warned, this is going to be pretty dry. We're going heavy into regulation, into various acts and legislation. So this is pretty dry stuff, but if that's what you're into, like I am, then stick around, as I'm sure you'll enjoy it. So let's get started. So here we are, guys, over on Bitcoin.com. This article was released yesterday in Australian time. Australia's Financial Intelligence Agency registers 246 Bitcoin exchanges. Well, this is actually old news. This has been, I've known this for a while. People in the industry know that that a lot of exchanges have registered in Australia. Now, why is that? Well, that's because AUSTRAC amended the AML-CTF Act 2006, I believe, last year, to include the capability for exchanges to register as a digital currency exchange. So they clearly defined the requirements for crypto exchanges to operate in Australia. Now, that may not seem like a big deal, but given how complex and volatile and unknown the global regulatory space is around cryptocurrencies, this was a huge deal and attracted literally hundreds of both national and international businesses to at least get their foot in the door and to register as a digital currency exchange. Now, that doesn't mean there is literally 200 exchanges operating. I can guarantee you there's certainly not, but it provided the opportunity for businesses to come to Australia and to register a digital currency exchange, because the regulations were set in place, the requirements were set in place on how you could operate legally within existing regulatory frameworks. So this article says here 246 Bitcoin exchanges coming under AUSTRAC. Now, getting into AUSTRAC a little bit and a little bit more about these exchanges and kind of what this actually meant for the Australian landscape and the global landscape as well. So it all came down to this digital currency exchange. So we had an existing act, an existing piece of legislation called the Anti-Money Laundering and Counter-Terrorism Financing Act 2006, or the AML-CTF Act. And that's what AUSTRAC, which is a federal government body, is responsible for managing. They're essentially responsible for that act. Now, what they did last year is they amended that act to include requirements and obligations for digital currency exchanges. And they eventually created a list where these different exchanges could apply to become a registered exchange under this AUSTRAC piece of legislation. Now, here's the actual piece of legislation here. Here's where we can kind of dive more deep into the AML-CTF Act and what it actually means and how that applies. And I think the key thing that applies is the definition of digital currency. And this kind of will show you how the different government bodies fit in and what their roles are. And to be honest, my interpretation is that government bodies worldwide are trying to figure out their roles for crypto assets. So they're like, some are responsible for securities, like ASIC here in Australia, or the SEC in the United States. And then you've got here in Australia, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, the ACCC. And then over in the States, you've got other bodies like the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. You've got FINRA. There's just all these government bodies that are trying to work out, like, what piece of the crypto pie do we have? Do we regulate? And firstly, let's just understand what crypto actually is. Anyway, so here we have the amended act. And when we look at the definition of digital currency, this is the most important part. Digital currency means a a digital representation of value that functions as a medium of exchange, a store of economic value, or a unit of account, and is not issued by or under the authority of a government body. That would, my interpretation of that is that the existing crypto asset is not a financial product, therefore it does not fall under the Corporations Act 2001, which would then fall under the ASIC. It would fall under ASIC. That's my interpretation. I'm not a lawyer, okay? So do not take what I'm saying as 100%. This is just my interpretation based on my experience. Okay, the second point there, the third point, is interchangeable with money, including through the crediting of an account, and may be used as consideration for the supply of goods or services, and is generally available to members of the public without any restriction on its use as consideration. Or B, a means of exchange or digital process, or crediting declared to be digital currency by the AML/CTF rules. And just a little footnote there, but does not include any right or thing that, under the AML/CTF rules, is taken not to be digital currency for the purposes of this Act. And then they've got the Digital Currency Exchange Register, which is that register I was talking about earlier that different businesses could register their exchange with, has the meaning given by Section 76B. So, based on my knowledge, this was one of the first pieces of legislation globally, one of the first globally, that specifically defined a cryptocurrency exchange, the regulations, the definitions, and the requirements for them to operate in a regulated framework in a specific country. Now, that can't be understated from a safety and security perspective for a business who needs to know what obligations they have to comply with to operate legally in a country. Very few businesses, especially well-established businesses, are going to take on the risk of trying to operate in a country where they do not fully understand the rules and regulations that they have to comply with. This is why we've seen a flood of exchanges, over 200, register in Australia, because again, this is one of the first. So this is an example of good regulation that has encouraged innovation, entrepreneurship, and capital to flow into a specific country. This has been done right, as far as what I can see. This is only pretty new legislation still, but this is an example of it being done the right way, so as to encourage the trust of businesses to allocate capital into the country to build out a business, and then for that capital to flow into the economy. Now, to give you some perspective on what it's like in other countries, let's take a look at what happens in the United States, because the United States is arguably one of the most regulated countries. Their regulation is full on. I would not like to be operating in crypto at all in the United States, put it that way. So for here we have the BitLicense regulatory framework. Now this is well known in the industry as being the most stringent regulation, and it's operated by the New York State. So back in the early days, a lot of Bitcoin exchanges were operated in New York, and after the BitLicense came in, they had to leave because it was just too much to comply with. I imagine it was likely the costs involved to comply, because you have to understand many businesses need to engage a lawyer, a securities lawyer, or other kind of lawyers that are experienced in corporate and regulatory law to get the clarification they need to ensure that they're doing the right thing, especially if they have a complex business model. And especially in crypto, where you have these coins perform so many different functions of which they haven't existed before. These functions, distributed ledgers, haven't existed before. So it's so new, and it can be extremely expensive, especially because lawyers experienced in this area, truly experienced, are few and far between, and they can charge significant rates for their service. So here we have the BitLicense. Next up, we have the National Securities Exchange. Now this is operated by the SEC. So the SEC governs anything related to securities, so essentially shares, stock in a company. And this is the big one. This is where all the big boys play. So this is the New York Stock Exchange, this is the CBOE, you've got the Chicago Stock Exchange, the NASDAQ. These are where the big boys play, but this is for securities. So then it's like, well, if I don't know if my particular coin is a security or not, then how does that flow into the exchange who wants to operate in the United States if they don't know if a particular coin is a security or not? What do they do? Because under this guideline, these exchanges are registered to trade securities. So for an exchange to trade crypto securities, they would have to be registered as a national securities exchange, which is a whole work in itself and costs involved. However, there are some outs for digital currency exchanges, and this is what they've been doing in the United States. Oh, my mouse just died. And this falls under the alternative trading system. And this is what Coinbase did. So the alternative trading system essentially allows exchanges that kind of operating in a different kind of way. So it might be like OTC desks, or it might be other kind of exchanges that are trading in a different way, or maybe not trading securities, but are still trading some kind of commodities or goods or services, to operate under this ATS license. And like I said, this is exactly what Coinbase have done. So you can see in their blog that they published a little while ago, they've said here that if this is in regards to their licenses, if approved, Coinbase will soon be capable of offering blockchain-based securities under the oversight of the US SEC and the Financial Regulatory Authority, that's FINRA. This step forward is being made possible by our acquisition of a broker-dealer license, an alternative trading system license, and a registered investment advisor license. So I imagine Coinbase has gotten legal advice to go the extra step and to obtain the investment advisor license and possibly the FINRA license as well, just to cover all bases. I mean, they're a huge exchange. They probably operate in most, if not all, states in the United States. So there might be some variations between states on their requirements. That's probably why they've gotten those extra things. So the reason why I know a lot of this stuff is through my consulting work that I have done in the last 18 months for various businesses. I was required essentially to look into a lot of these different regulations in my project scoping work. I would basically scope projects and cost estimate them for different decentralized applications. So a part of that is you have to look at the regulatory framework. You have to look at where these projects, how they're supposed to operate, and the different requirements or obligations they may have. So next up, we've got, this has only just come out, and this has come from the Australian Treasury, and this is on initial coin offering. So what the Australian Treasury want to do is seek advice from the Australian public and or global public, I'm sure as well, on how ICOs should be regulated, how they should be operated, and what are some of the risks and other controls that should be put in place to allow the innovation and the capital to come into Australia, but not to constrict it to the point where Australia becomes too much of a burden for companies to operate in. And this is just an absolutely fantastic paper that they've issued. So here's the paper that they've literally just published on initial coin offerings, and they've called it the issues paper. Now from top to bottom, it goes through ICOs in detail, so how ICOs have typically operated, the complications involved, and how the different tokens work. And I must say, whoever wrote this, or the group of people who wrote this, did an absolutely fantastic job. They really understand their stuff, because this is the thing, when you start getting into regulatory stuff on crypto assets, you'll often find, because this space changes so often and it is so supremely complicated, I don't think enough credit is given to just how complicated crypto is. I mean, you've got technology, finance, you've got cryptography, you've got the political side, you've got the social side. It is extremely complex. So whoever wrote this paper really understands their stuff, highlighted some fantastic examples, and framed the paper. The tonality of the paper is right in the middle. I think it's extremely good. Now, what they're doing is they are seeking advice on different components. So let's go down to one of the key questions. One of the key questions they want advice and help with is, what is the clearest way to define ICOs and different categories of tokens? And then they give some examples of some other scenarios, and some more questions here. What is the effect and importance of secondary trading in the ICO market? What will be the key drivers of the ICO market going forward? So this is an open invitation for advice and help to the Australian Treasury on how to go about regulating ICOs. I really want to respond, and I'm going to if I have the time. I think I can add a lot of value here, and I encourage you guys to as well. If you've got some time to read through this and you know your stuff and you want to help them out on, give them your perspective and give them your experience and your opinion, definitely do it. I mean, this is our opportunity to kind of position Australia in the same on the same forefront with innovation. Right, because businesses are going to come here, they're going to build products here, they're going to innovate in the crypto space. If it's easy, if it's not too costly, if the right regulatory frameworks are in place to allow them to know that they're doing the right thing legally, but it not be over the top where it becomes too much of a costly or risky burden to them. So this is our opportunity to provide input. And yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. So I think Australia is really on the right path. Everything I'm seeing, the different government bodies and how they're involved. Some of the different government bodies that are involved in crypto at the moment, we have the ACCC, which is the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission. They have handed over delegation of some of their powers to ASIC, which is the Australian Securities and Investments Commission, in regards to misleading and deceptive conduct. So we've got ASIC, then we have obviously the ATO. They've given the Australian Tax Office, they've given some guidelines on tax. Now we have the Treasury, and we also have AUSTRAC. So eventually, I think one thing I'd really like to do is produce maybe a nice graphic that shows all the different government bodies and their roles in the crypto space. I think that'd be highly useful for me, and I'm sure some other people would probably find some use in that as well. So guys, that's it for the video. Hope you gained some insight. Hope you gained some knowledge. If you want to go and check out any of these resources further, links down in the description as always. Go and check them out. If you liked the video, consider giving me a like. Really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed, consider coming on board. And also, welcome to all new subscribers. It's so awesome to see this channel starting to grow and some people starting to come on board. So if you're not subscribed, make sure to subscribe. Leave a comment. Tell me what you think. And yeah, take it easy, guys. And I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.